I again request all the participants, all the delegates to please reassemble in the main hall. We are about to begin the last session of the day. The last and final session of the day is about to begin. I request all the participants, all the delegates who are enjoying tea, they can bring their cup of tea in the hall so that we can begin this last session very shortly. I request all the volunteers to ensure that the delegates and the participants of this program, they reassemble in the main hall, which would allow us to start the last session of the day. Auzu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, we are now commencing the last and final session of the day. And this session also comprises of presentation of research papers by 4 of our learned scholars. This session will be chaired by Dr. M. Kabir Hassan, who is a professor of finance. I request Professor Saab to please join us on the stage. During this session, the first paper which will be presented, and the title is Towards Greater Financial Inclusion of Refugees in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, a risk-sharing based Islamic financial solution. And this will be presented by Ala Alabad. I request her to please join us on the stage. The next paper, titled Role of Takaful in Rising Higher Education Enrollment in Pakistan, and this will be presented by Dr. Muhammad Imran, Head of Islamic at UBL. I request him to please join us on the stage. The third paper which will be presented by Salman Sayyid Ali, and the topic is Islamic Sukuk Defaults and Issues in the Resolution, the case of William R. Sukuk. I request Salman Sayyid Ali to please join us on the stage. And finally, the last paper will be delivered by Dr. Ziad Muhammad, and the title is Case Study Developing an Islamic Cooperative Model into an Ethical Risk-Sharing FinTech Solution. Ziad Muhammad, he will join us shortly. This session will be chaired and moderated by Dr. M. Kabir Hassan. We have an hour to conclude this session. Over to you, Doctor.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the last session of the day. You must be very tired, but you have to carry on. So we have 4 papers. Originally it was scheduled for 75 minutes. Now I had to cut it short to 60 minutes. So I would say that let's plan on having a presentation within 12 minutes, and when there are 3 minutes left, I will just raise my hand to give you a warning. So let me start with the first presentation towards greater financial inclusion refugees in the 4th Industrial Revolution, a resharing based Islamic financial solution by Professor Abbas Mirakor, Allah Alabad and Ali Alabad, and Allah is going to present.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabina Muhammadin wa ala ali bayti tayyibin at-tahirin. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by thanking the organizers of the World Islamic Finance Forum for this opportunity. Towards greater financial inclusion of refugees in the 4th Industrial Revolution offers a solution to the huge economic costs incurred by donor and host countries today. Forced displacements are at a level unseen since the Second World War. More than 50 million people are seeking refuge from wars and armed conflicts around the globe. A considerable percentage of those affected are Muslims. Giving a refugee a fish will feed him or her for a day, but facilitating access to capital and necessary training will go a long way to alleviate poverty and contribute to economic empowerment of refugees, thus reducing the pressure on host and donor countries and contributing to more inclusive economic growth. Refugees fleeing war in Syria, for example, are found to be highly skilled. Standard micro-entrepreneurs and SMEs generally find difficulties in raising funds. Refugees and displaced are even more disadvantaged as a unique class of prospective micro-entrepreneurs. They often lack full data and documentation conventionally required by banks' know your customer policies. They may also be perceived as exceeding banks' risk appetite with no recourse to collateral. As a result, they are involuntarily financially excluded. So what is the proposed solution? It's an equity-based crowdfunding mobile application that channels funds from investors to refugee entrepreneurs at fingertips in compliance with Islamic precepts. Islamic finance has certain features which are ideal to foster full financial and economic inclusion. These include risk sharing, close link between the real and financial sectors of the economy, emphasis on materiality and socio-economic justice. Risk sharing reduces participation barriers and overcome informational and commitment problems which are otherwise present in debt-based lending. Fintech, on the other hand, provides innovative alternatives to currently underserved markets. Fintech has already disrupted mainstream finance with the proliferation of peer-to-peer finance, also known as crowdfunding, where small surplus units are pooling resources online to fund deficit units without going through a traditional financial intermediary such as the bank. Innovative risk assessment models allows assessing risk based on non-traditional data such as phone records, social media, and behavioral patterns. Almost 90% of Syrian refugees are reportedly having access to smartphones. So this further reinforces the value proposition of using fintech. The model we propose is a direct flow model, which means the platform never takes any ownership of the funds transferred. Retail and institutional investors are able to share refugees' upside and downside potential through equity partnership contracts, mudaraba or musharaka. In addition to the financing provided, the mobile application will facilitate online training in the refugees' native language, management support, and interface with local authorities in order to provide timely and cooperative interaction. The mobile platform will also be required to fulfill certain gatekeeper functions to ensure the security of data and online transactions. So the proposed solution is expected to improve the lives of refugees through financial inclusion, economic empowerment, and social inclusion. It's also hoped that this platform will provide Islamic finance with the means to better deliver on their promise of inclusive finance. Direct and disintermediated financing method can also overcome the distrust in current donation systems and channels, and therefore deploy ample cash that currently yields minimal rates of return in saving and investment accounts. With all that being said, it's important to account for risks that could threaten refugees' enterprises. An unforeseen illness or accident may push an entire household back to poverty and undermine the stability of this proposal. Therefore, access to full financial services, including microinsurance, will be necessary, and so will be the provision of health and education services. Thank you.
Let us move to the second paper, and we'll wait for question and answers at the end, okay? And I will also give my comments towards the end. Our second paper is Role of Takaful in Raising Higher Education Endowment in Pakistan by Muhammad Imran and Mohsin Khaza, will be presented by Muhammad Imran.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem, amma ba'd. Before starting the presentation, I would like to brief about the background, what led me and Mohsin towards doing this research. I have a unique background in terms of having a PhD in economics, which I have done with Dr. Qazi Masood from IBA. He is the head of Center for Business Economic Research. And I've also been in the Islamic banking industry for the last 15 years. So I've been on the both side of the fence. Academia has been doing some significant research, but when it comes to making products that can create an economic value and when it can create an impact on the society, there is a gap that we always identified was there. So the main aim of this research paper is to explore an avenue through Takaful which can lead the way to create an economic impact on the higher education enrollment rate in Pakistan. Just to put the things in perspective, if we take a look at the SAARC countries, Pakistan, which comprise of South Asian nations, the tertiary level or the higher education level education rate of India is 11%. That means that if 100 children go to the schools in India, out of those 11 go to the university level. In Sri Lanka, it's 19%. In Bhutan, it's 9%. For Pakistan, it's just 3.9%. Which means that if 100 children in Pakistan go to school, just 3.9 kids go to the university level. This is pathetic. This is very bad. So the first step of the research was that we have to find out reasons why the parents do not send their children to university. Pakistan, as we all know, is one of the largest countries of the world with a diverse background. So in order to make the research more reasonable, we conducted the research in 3 large cities of Pakistan, which we call the KLI of Pakistan: Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, which included Rawalpindi as well. It was also restricted to the salaried class so that we can concentrate more on the urban middle class segment, which are more inclined towards sending their children to university because they are compelled for their children to get higher education. So please keep in mind the scope. It's the urban middle class residing in Karachi, Lahore and Islamabad, and they have a minimum salary of 50,000 rupees per month. So by this standard, you can well imagine that people who are living in the far-fetched areas of the country and who do not have a salary of 50,000 rupees per month, what difficulties would they be facing for funding their children to get higher education level. So if we can go to the findings directly, because we are short of time. 63% of the respondents said that they do plan for their children's higher level education, while 37% of the respondents said that they do not. Our research is mostly concentrated to those 37% of the sample who said that they do not plan for their children higher education. Now we have to find out the reason that why they don't. Out of those 37%, the distribution of dependence of education for finance was 63.75%. So if we just dissect it more, here's the answer. If they get a solution through a financial institution, a whopping 94.57% said that they would be interested in getting a takaful or an insurance-based plan if it's been offered by a bank. Now it's a very, very important figure. Please concentrate on this slide first. There are 37% who do not plan. Out of these 37%, 94.57% said that if we get a solution through a bank, then they will opt for it. There is a reason. There is a history in Pakistan of cooperative scandals and some mudarba companies which opened up in Pakistan on the name of Islam, and they ripped off people of their hard-earned money. So now they have a lot of confidence on the banks and the financial institutions and not on standalone companies that can provide the solution. So it's not a surprise when this figure comes in. Then 94.57 said that if the solution is provided by the bank or a financial institution, then they'll opt for this solution. The next question was that if they are offered a conventional insurance solution as compared to takaful, what the response would be. 17% said that they would be indifferent, while another 83% clearly said that they would be interested in a takaful option. Now, if we just pull all these jigsaw puzzle together, the result is very obvious. 37% of this sample which do not plan for their children's education are interested to plan for their children's higher education if a banking solution is provided to them, conditional to that it offers an Islamic takaful plan, that Islamic insurance plan, not a conventional one. So it makes the picture more clear. Now that takes us to the next level of this presentation. That is about what sort of a product would they be needing. So we conduct a reverse analysis in which we analyze from them that what is the amount of income that they can set aside from their monthly income which they can put in their pool to fund their children higher education level. So the exercise that we did was, normally in these urban middle class segments, a person's age is between 23 to 25 years when he or she starts his or her career. If they start saving just 1,750 Pakistani rupees per month till the time that their children go for a higher education level, which is for the next 22 years, on an annuity-based return, they can get their children admitted in any top-level education, higher-level education institution in Pakistan. That includes LUMS, IBA, NUST. So I'll repeat this. If a person whose age is 22 to 24 years or 23 to 25 years, he or she starts saving till the time that his or her kids go to the university level, which the stage comes in after another 22 to 23 years, just by saving rupees 1,750 rupees per month, they will be able to fund the education of one child to any top level higher education institution in Pakistan. Now the question comes in, why are we not doing this? When we check the awareness level of takaful amongst the respondents was pathetic. Only 12% people knew what takaful is. So the action item is we have to create mass awareness. Number two, when we contacted in a closed sample with the government officials, just one out of the 25 government officials that we contacted even knew that takaful as a solution is available to the people in Pakistan. So what are the action points? Action point number one, mass awareness program has to be launched in collaboration with the government along with the industry and the takaful companies. The commercial banks along with the takaful companies have to launch a product which is very simple to offer, with this aim that this is basically focused towards increasing the higher education insurance rate in Pakistan. And then comes the media or the public relation part, where the banks along with the takaful companies and the regulator have to portray image, then Islamic finance through this product has provided an avenue through which a positive image of Islamic finance can be portrayed, that Islamic finance, banks and Takaful both have provided an avenue through which an economic impact in terms of increasing the higher education enrollment rate in Pakistan has been achieved through the help of Islamic financial solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Muhammad Imran. Our next presenter is Dr. Salman Syed Ali from Tirthi Islamic Development Bank. Islamic Sukuk default and issues, the resolution, the case of Wilmar Sukuk.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If I can change the slides. Okay, from here. Thank you. So this is a pretty simple model, and what I'm going to talk about is not a very difficult issue, but it is a very important issue that has affected the industry and it is affecting the industry. That is a Sukuk default and the issues in their resolution. And I have taken one case, a case of Wilmar Sukuk, to make the point. The problem is that any business can have problems and it can default, but if the resolution is not quick and not smooth, then it can create problems and delays. And such delays are detrimental, especially for the financial industry if this happens over here. So I have chosen this Sukuk, although there are various cases of Sukuk default, high profile Sukuk defaults, but this case is much simpler in the sense that this was a Musharka Sukuk. Musharka in the sense that it was advertised as a partnership-based Sukuk, and which should be very easy to resolve. So this is the purpose, that to understand the nature and the causes of difficulties encountered in the quick settlement of the defaulted Sukuk, and also to see what Sharia issues are faced in the resolution, which delay the process of settlement. So I'll quickly go over the structure of the Wilmar Sukuk, which was a partnership or Musharka Sukuk, the key parties, and then we will look into the analysis of the default and why the resolution was delayed. And I would like to go over this using 4 basic questions. The 4 basic questions that I would pose are these: that can a Musharka default? Musharka can go bankrupt, but the term default has a specific meaning, that you have to have a specific obligation that you were not able to meet. This should not be the case. So why a Musharka Sukuk default? Question number 2. What are the key features of a Musharka and test of its validity? So whether this Sukuk was in fact a Musharka or not. The third, can a trust structure be misused? Because in most of the Sukuk structures, we put a trust, and in this case of this Musharka Sukuk, there was a special nature of the trust. And the fourth question, that can trust and its governance issues be ignored? And try to show that these are important things for resolution, and the things that we are facing delays and problems are because we have not given much thought upfront to these issues, so that when things get bad, at that time we start thinking and it takes time. So let me go back to the structure of the Sukuk itself. Although there are many things that are shown on the diagram, but there are basically 3 things. That one is the Musharka itself, which is in the center, and there are 2 partners to it. One is RSRED, which is the Residential South Real Estate Development Company, and the other partner is the issuer or the trustee, which were providing $190 million, and the RSRED, the company, was providing the license to construct on the land. So one partner was providing money, other was providing in-kind capital, and that in-kind capital was only licensed to construct, as well as a letter of credit in case of as a guarantee. So this was another feature of this sukuk, was that this was launched in 2008 after the famous Ayofi controversy, after the issuance of the new revised guidelines. So this sukuk doesn't have that buyback option, that it was not providing guarantees through one partner is buying back the shares of the other partner. So from that perspective, it was good. But still, the term default was used, and what went wrong? So there was some problem of the business model as well as some problem of the structuring issue. The business model was such that part of the money came from the partner, and part of the money was supposed to come from, this company was creating, let's say, 3 residential towers. As each residential tower will be sold, the new money will come in, and that will also be used for construction. So here was the weakness, that because of the financial crisis, when the new units were not sold, the new money was not coming, so the project stopped, and the problem started. So it could have been closed, and each shareholder should have received what was due or whatever was the residual value. But instead of that, a default occurred, and so what is the issue? So if we look into this Musharaka sukuk, this was a strange structure in the sense that sukuk holders, the sukuk issuing company, was holding sukuk holding assets on behalf of the sukuk holders, but the sukuk holding, this trustee, which is on your left, was in between the actual musharaka and the sukuk holders. So in case of any problem, the sukuk holders did not have a proper recourse to the musharaka, not to the actual asset, but even to the musharaka. They had only recourse to the assets of that trust, and what trust was holding was only the shares. And in fact, what this happened, that when musharaka had to be shut down, the sukuk holders had only recourse to those pieces of papers. They were not able to claim anything. So the question is, what rights or what powers we have given to the trustees? Trustees were there to protect the investors. So the trust is only, in some cases, the SPV works as a trust just in order to separate the assets. But over here, the trustee should also have some execution power on behalf of the sukuk holders. And in many of the structures, such powers are not there. The trustee himself looks to the other partner or the project company for the guidance what to do now, rather than having the power to act on behalf of the trustees. Would not be able to initiate any bankruptcy proceedings or closure proceedings. This is one problem. Secondly, the incentive structure was such that although this was a musharaka, but there was a cap, that there was a minimum amount, that if the firm is earning more than that, the trustees will receive only that much, LIBOR plus a percentage that they will pass on to the sukuk holders, and whatever the excess will belong to the other partner. So again, this was although Fuqaha has allowed such a structure based on the two things, that in the musharaka, the profit sharing is up to the negotiation of the two parties, but the losses has to be shared strictly according to the capital contributions of the two parties. So based on that, and based on the hadith that al-muslimuna ala shurutihim, they have allowed such kind of structures, but this type of structure has been misused. And there is an internal conflict of interest that I wanted to show over here in this graph, if I can catch that graph quickly. That here's the graph. The red line is the classic debt contract line, and the green line is the classic partnership line. On the x-axis, we are looking at the project profit, and the y-axis, let's say investor one's proportion of the profit, which investor one is the trustees. So the kink that is coming up in the 45 in this red line, this kink produces lots of difficulties in the conventional model, that in case of bankruptcy, whenever the project is unable to generate more than that minimum requirement, the project jumps to zero. So this kink creates the default risk. And in partnership, the interest of the two partners remain aligned throughout until it is the negative profit, which is lost, in which case the division will be according to the respective capitals. So when this conflict of interest is not resolved, then the problem will come in through backdoor. So the 4 questions that I asked was, first of all, can a musharaka default? It cannot default. The reason we are saying default is just because one party was simply getting LIBOR plus a fixed return, and when they were not able to give this, is a default initiation. Second problem was that how much information, how much powers you have given to the trustees. Trustees was not given enough powers. So just to conclude, key lessons that we get from this kind of sukuk. This sukuk had many desirable properties and conditions built into it. There was no guarantee from one partner to the other. It tried to meet the AOFI requirements. However, it failed to be a musharaka on a number of key requirements and conditions. Second lesson that we can learn is that the successful subscription of Willamar sukuk, although it was not a true musharaka, shows that the lending investors desired a lending instrument, that is competitive returns, principal secured, and the borrowing debtors desired a debt instrument. However, at the same time, both lenders and borrowers also wanted to feel that they are abiding by Sharia, so maybe they were doing structurally right things, but the spirit was not right. Third, interest-bearing debt has inherent conflict of interest between lender and the borrower, which gives rise to stark differences in the behaviors of the two parties in the event of default and the bankruptcy. One party would like to, if there is a default, one party would like to grab all the assets, the other party would like to, will not have anything. So in profit sharing, a musharaka, this conflict of interest does not arise. So the same type of conflict of interest between two partners, if it arises, meaning that there is a problem. And this is another test for musharaka itself. The fourth lesson that we learn is that creating a trust and appointing trustees without endowing them with the necessary independence and powers to protect the interests of the beneficiaries will not be helpful. Rather, such trust itself becomes a source of delays in the resolution of bankruptcy, because the trustee cannot take the action and they are looking right and left for the orders, marching orders. Fifth lesson that we get from here is that there is a need to provide collective bargaining power to the sukuk holders. Right now, there is no collective bargaining power. The powers rest with the trustee, which will be, which is supposed to protect the interests of the sukuk holders, but the trustee himself has no powers. Sixth lesson, a trust which is proactive, independent, and endowed with appropriate powers to protect the interests of sukuk holders will be more beneficial than a trust that is created only for the separation of assets, for bankruptcy remoteness purposes only. So seventh lesson that we get is, in a partnership sukuk, the remoteness between the partners and the assets of the project can be made for the normal course of business, because we would not like the sukuk holders to interfere in the business. However, this remoteness has to vanish in case of a bankruptcy or early winding up of the partnership. And if this lifting of the veil is not possible, then we are having problem. Eighth lesson that we get, that there are social, economic, and religious consequences of the kind of non-recourse tolerated in the Willamar sukuk. First, that it contributed to the delay in the resolution and elongated losses. Secondly, it missed the opportunity to provide a good example of Islamic profit and loss sharing, because although this was constructed according to the existing rules, but the spirit was missing. And I know that in the trust laws that Security Exchange Commission Pakistan has brought in recent laws, they have given excessive powers, enough powers to the trust holders. But the question is that the law that is defined, this is the regulator's law, but the law which will be implemented will be the law in the books of the law, where the SPVs and the trust laws are defined, and there is no such provision. So if the court of such issue goes to the court will decide according to the penal code or according to those. So regulator may be doing whatever they are doing, so there is a need to reconcile the two laws in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Salman Saeed Ali. Our final presentation will be by Ziad Mahmood, case study developing an Islamic cooperative model into an ethical risk sharing in a fintech solution.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أما بعد. This is much less an academic paper as much as it is a case study or a proposal of a new model. And we're hoping that at the end of this presentation there'd be some valuable comments and suggestions on how to refine this model. Now let me set the scene. I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Yusuf. Yusuf is an Indonesian, approximately 45 years old, and a little over 20 years ago, he was a laborer in a factory, and he was earning a set salary, a set wage. But he realized at a very young age that if he continued on that path, he'd live hand to mouth on a daily basis, and that would just continue until he was in the grave. So one day he came home to his wife and he said, "That's it. That's it. I'm not going to follow the norm. I need to do something different. I want to be somebody different." Now bear in mind, he has no education. He's not literate. He's not literate. But he knows that he wants to make a success of his life and his family's life. And he also knows that he's Muslim. He knows that riba is prohibited. So what he does is he takes his last wage and he buys a few chickens. He buys a few chicken with the intention of selling the eggs to the neighbor. And he began like that, and within a few years, he bought a few goats. And from a few goats to a few sheep. And from that, within 20 years, through the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he owned 1,000 head of cattle. 1,000. Not only that, he owns rice paddies beyond what the eye can see. In fact, the situation is such that when we visited him, he didn't know where his estate ended. He didn't know. Nor did he know where his cattle were. And that was the crux of the problem. Because there was no cash, there was no capital. But he had assets. He had a lumber mill with a furniture factory and a coffee plantation of 5 acres sitting on a mountaintop with a waterfall behind it, but there was no one to harvest the coffee. He built 2 schools, and we're going to talk about that a little later. He built 2 schools on the premises to educate the kids of the village that he belonged to. But he faced a number of problems. Number one, every month, when he tried to do a head count, he realized that he was losing a significant number of cattle. They just disappeared. They were either stolen or they died because of illness. He had an insufficient labor force. He had just a few people looking after the cows, and unfortunately, to look after rice paddies and coffee plantations and a lumber mill, it was just not possible. He had no capital, no cash, no Sharia knowledge, no education, illiterate. He did not even know any modern farming methods. He knew what was passed on from his father. Allow the cattle to graze, and when they're fat enough, sell them in the market. When we investigated, we found that he was losing approximately 50 cattle every month. That was just due to theft. And who was stealing it? His neighbors, the villagers. He belonged to a fairly large village of 1,000 plus families, and well, they needed to survive. They were living hand to mouth, so they took a cow, and he didn't know the difference because he didn't have a proper head count either. They were losing 10 to 20 cattle every month, mortality, illness, because they were just eating standard grass. He wants to export the meat, but unfortunately he can't do so because he needs proper halal certification. There were such high levels of poverty in the village that it was just not a good fit. And I'm only talking about one project here, the cattle project. Forget about the rice paddies and the coffee plantations and the lumber mills that had similar issues of skills and capital and manpower. So we looked for a solution. Now naturally the first port of call was microfinance. You know, everyone's jumping up and down about the success of microfinance, and yes, it probably has been successful in specific areas, but you will see in the quick literature review that when we looked at microfinance, we realized that it's not the perfect fit. We looked at cooperatives because in Indonesia, and that's where this project is based, cooperatives are very successful, but there are challenges with cooperatives, social pressure issues, a number of issues, entrepreneurship issues. We thought of waqf and awqaf, excellent solution, but the people we're dealing with hold up their honor, meaning they don't want to receive handouts. They don't want to receive charity. If they receive zakat, oh, it's a big thing. It's a serious issue. Why are you giving him zakat? Yes, he only has one basic meal a day, but he doesn't need zakat. So you understand the dignity of the people here. So we couldn't find a perfect fit in any of those. In fact, when we looked at microfinance from the literature and practice, we realized that there is a serious issue. Poorer families were found not to be the beneficiaries of microfinance. Those that could already afford it are those that are receiving microfinance. So are they graduating from below the poverty level? No, they're already fairly well off. So it's not solving that core problem of socioeconomic upliftment. In fact, when you're providing to the poorer families, they are taking it as consumption spending. It's not investing in any capital because they need to eat. So the money goes directly into food and they eat that, and of course they can't pay back the debt. And it's a cycle. So poor people are becoming poorer through microfinance. Poor people are becoming poorer through microfinance. The exorbitant rates, 35% is the current global average. Uzbekistan's average is 80% per annum. Now you'd ask yourself, but why would anyone take finance for 80% interest? But when you break it down into weeks, then you realize a small amount every week is not that significant, or it doesn't look significant. But when you tally it, then you realize how large that interest rate is. And here's something surprising, for me at least. Microfinance and the success, so-called success of microfinance has attracted high net worth individuals. And I'm not going to give you names, but very high net worth individuals that have taken the opportunity to do social good by lending at exorbitant rates. It appeases the conscience of the high net worth individuals that are involved because they're providing finance to the poor at 35%. You need to absorb that for a second and how ridiculous that sounds. They feel they're doing good by providing microfinance to poor people that are paying much higher rates than you and I would pay at any conventional bank. Something quite shocking. Fine, you have the alternative of Islamic microfinance. But Islamic microfinance follows murabaha, ijara, salam and istisna, primarily salam. These are sale-based products which ultimately result in a debt. A sale-based product results in a debt. This is not risk sharing. So the microfinance institution, Islamic microfinance institution, is well protected. It's a debt that's owed. You can't pay, fine. we're going to take what we need. Prof. Abbas is sitting here. As my teacher, he always talks about risk sharing. Everyone knows that. And he's not the only one. He's well supported by luminaries in the academic field, and not only Muslim scholars. Scholars from different religious denominations or no religious denominations that all talk about risk sharing as the way forward for a stable and sound economy. So, we're trying to solve the problem, and how do we look at solving the contemporary challenge of microfinance? Let's look at it. Over the last 10 years, in 2006, the UN PRI resolutions, United Nations Principles of Responsible Investing, talk about a surge or a new set of principles that will govern investment. And from a small base of $60 billion worth of investment, we are now looking at $6 trillion of socially responsible investment moving across Europe. Very short space of time, growing phenomenally. And we know everyone's talking about ethical and green investment right now. That's the move. That's the move. So we've thought about that and we've incorporated it into our model. Then we have another problem. Distribution channels for investment. When you want to take out an investment, you'd go to a broker and he'd give you advice as a financial advisor, but you're pretty much investing in stocks on the exchange and the scope is fairly limited. Fintech, financial technology is the buzzword today. So looking at digital platforms to be able to access investments such that you open up your smartphone, you have a smart app, and that gives you access to an investment. And right now we know the craze around crowdfunding. All crowdfunding does, it is providing a digital platform of access of investment. That's all it does. The technicality behind it is not that fancy. Islamic fintech solutions are gaining ground, alhamdulillah. But how does a savvy, Islamically conscious investor actually get involved in a sophisticated, risk-managed project that is graduating people from below the poverty line? He wants to have that impact on the economy, such that he sees that person rise up. He wants to earn a profit out of it, but he wants to see socio-economic development. So this is the proposed solution. A two-tier solution. Yes, if you're thinking two-tier mudaraba, you'll be on the right track. Because if we're looking at a two-tier solution, the first tier talks about the villages on one end and a management company on the other. So this is how we look at solving the problem. First issue, we have stolen cattle, we have high mortality rates, and I'm focusing right now only on the project, the cattle project. So what do? Give each villager one ox, one cow. There's 1,000 families, call them up, and each one is going to be given one head of cattle. What is his objective? Well, that family will have to look after that head to ensure that within X period, 12 to 18 months, it reaches the necessary weight and then it goes to market. And when it goes to market, 30% of the profit will be for the villager and 70% will be for the owner, the original owner. Literally sharing the profits, sharing the risk with the villager. The first thing we found was all theft reduced to zero, obviously, because all the villagers now are taking care of their own little project. But that's not enough. Why? These are not just Indonesian cattle. These are Australian cattle. They grow quicker, but they demand a lot of care. They require a specific level of feed. That means the food must be of a specific quality. They require supplements and vitamins, and look, they're not receiving that, so we've got to fix that problem as well. So what we did was, we ring-fenced each project. The cattle project is ring-fenced. And all the possible risk is managed for the cattle project. We know we have a risk of mortality, bring in a doctor, bring in a vet, and a vet is assigned on-site permanently. First problem solved. Mortality reduces to 1 a month from 10 and 20 a month. We have another issue, feed. Cattle feed, no problem. At the management company level, we establish a little silo. And at the silo, we develop the necessary food, the premium food that will be distributed to the villages so that they give this food to the cattle. Next problem, we need supplements and vitamins. The schools that I talked about earlier, they have little children from the age of 6 to the age of 15. But when they reach the age of 14 and 15, they are learning how to mix vitamins. So we have a scientist or a university, an agricultural scientist, who comes over and teaches at the school. And he teaches them not just math and science, but he teaches them how to mix a high standard of supplements for this breed of cow. Animal husbandry is what they're learning. Practical things that will give back to the community. They produced their first vitamins last year. Their first supplements last year in little ordinary bottles. And we're now ready to market that off to neighboring farms because everybody wants it. It has been tested by the agricultural university as good quality. And now that in itself is a marketing product that can move over. So from the cattle perspective, we now have one last issue, training. Because those villagers don't know any modern method of looking after a cow. But that's where the university scientists come in. As they graduate, they need internship programs. They come in and spend their internship at the village. And they teach them modern farming techniques. So the villagers learn in their own language how to look after a cow. And if the cow reaches its target weight, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, at every target weight, on the basis of ju'ala or bonus or incentive, the villager is given a food hamper which will last him 3 months. So he's not receiving zakat, but he's receiving some bonus for the effort that he put in. Like that, we solve the food problem or the starvation problem. They get empowered through the training, and of course that filters through to quality cows. Now by ring fencing each of them, we also calculate a net asset value for each of them because we've minimized the risk. So we've developed a risk return profile for each mini project. And like that, that will feed over into the head farmer and the management company that will look after this whole project. But where's the capital coming from? That's tier 2. So we've looked at the operational end, and now we will look at the investment end. At the investment end, as we're sitting here in Karachi, many of us have smartphones, if not all, and we quickly pull out our smartphones and we open up the app, a smart app that allows us direct investment into that project. How? Very simple. Using a fintech platform, we have an algorithm that will ask each investor questions. It will ask him, what's your age? What's your risk appetite? How much of return do you expect to receive? What level of loss are you willing to accept? Using all of those questions and leading on, we develop a risk profile for each investor. The robo-advisor, which is the fintech solution, will spit out 2 or 3 options for the investor, saying, we think you should put 20% in cattle, 40% in rice paddies, 30% in chicken, and this is your portfolio diversification so that you have your risk mitigated and you have a balanced portfolio. And like that, he is receiving dividends, but from a Sharia-based platform, not a Sharia-compliant platform. And I want to stress on this issue here. We look at Islamic banking products going through a checklist and becoming Sharia compliant. We're not talking about Sharia compliance here. We're talking about a Sharia base. From the very beginning, this is a risk-sharing initiative, sharing with the villagers and watching them progress above the poverty line. Now, when I give you this example of this two-tier solution, I don't want you to see it in simply the 4 projects, because we have neighboring cooperatives that are now coming on board. By having 100 cooperatives, that investor has now diversified his portfolio significantly because he's buying cows from one initiative and chicken from another initiative, such that the risk is completely diversified. That's the first issue. In order to share that profit, we use a mudaraba structure. It's a risk-weighted structure. If the investor wants to pull out his funds at any stage, we have a demand product for him. We have a fixed period product for him. And each project has its own weightage using the point system, which has been agreed by IOFI. So for each project, they will have a weighted system in order to calculate a risk-return profile. And now the process of expansion, because I've shown you that friend, one man, and the 4 projects expanded into 100 cooperatives, which is not 400, which is 1,000, because it's not 4 mini projects per cooperative. Cooperatives have many mini projects, but it's not one country. The plan is to expand this model into Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and look at another advantage that an investor can receive, and that's currency hedging. That's political risk hedging. All of that can be gained if he is investing across borders. For example, if he's investing across the Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore border, that's very easy because there's a cross-border agreement and you can quite easily move funds across. So he will have the advantage of currency hedging as the model expands. But not only that, we want to create an engine room, a market, a central market for all of these villages, such that the highest quality feed might be made in Pakistan and sold to the villager in Indonesia, but not being exploited by a third party. They are selling directly through to each other. We know what happens. We have, people working hard and using their hands to make fancy embroidery and textiles. And all of that, unfortunately, is sold at small profits for them and large profits for the middleman. They've produced organic pesticides and supplements, and a cross-border trade of all of these products will ultimately benefit the person, the villager, at the operational end, and the investor at the dividend end. In summary, more than 300,000 cooperatives exist in Indonesia. Micro-lending, we believe, often exacerbates the problem of poverty. There's a lack of entrepreneurial skills. With our model, we look at empowering them through proper training. It's an actively managed investment. It's not an investment based on debt. It's an investment based on risk sharing. Hence, we have to be active. Zakat and Waqf offer partial solutions, but we believe that this is a lot more comprehensive, with active management in a 2-tier cooperative model that ring fences the projects based on the risk pricing and a net asset value, coupled with distribution through an artificial intelligence powered investment platform. That's your fintech platform. We can mold a rural farming project into a contemporary cutting edge investment solution that is completely Sharia based. I will end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ziad. So we are very close to the end of this session. So let me just quickly, I have what I understood from the presentation. I never did have a chance to read the papers before. But Allah, in your presentation, everything is fine, but you're dealing with the refugees. So you need a technology. For technology, you need some sort of address, some sort of stability of this population. This population is moving from place to place. And how do you solve it? You can answer it later. Takaful, in the United States, we do have, like every state, we are trying to solve the education financing problem. So your solution is, your proposed solution from the private sector. Ultimately, you want to do it through a takaful. There are, the government, I do not know in the state Pakistan, whether the government has a scheme like this in order to do this, but that could be done also other ways too, right? But your specific solution is through takaful. And about Sukuk, excellent presentation. Actually, he has gone to the micro level and he has found it specific, and actually it's very good. He has another paper you should read, the Ilhas Finance Failure, the way he has designed the case and he has written and sort of pinpointed an ideal, if you want to do an academic writing, follow that, and I'm sure you get a hold of his paper. It's wonderful, so I don't have any question. Ziad, I like you're a visionary. It seems to me you have a lot of ideas, and if you can do all these things, it will be wonderful, but you have to start from somewhere for a small thing. So the example that you have given is just an example in the conceptual level, or it's a real thing in practice right now. So if it is actually, that's sharing the way the investor side as well as the, now you very often you are saying this technology is making a lot of things easy for us. So if I'm sitting here right now and want to invest in one of the cooperative, I can do that. So that the risk management part some way. So somewhere in this process, all of us, the government or some sector has to make sure, ensure the risk management, the regulatory aspect of this thing. Fintech is a new buzzword, not buzzword. Actually, I believe I'm a banking professor. In the next 20, 30 years, I do not know whether we'll see any raw mortar and brick bank anymore, really. And actually, the intermediation process probably will be washed away, wither away slowly and slowly with the technology. So the technology, how to make it, and actually it will be to our advantage, really, if you can do this, to bring this in the risk-sharing principle of Islamic finance rather than going to more of a debt financing mode. So that's wonderful. So that is my few submission. I want to open the floor for few questions. So when you have a question, please introduce yourself and direct the question to the person that you want the answer for. Somebody with a microphone, please. Okay. Hello.
My name is Fayaz and I'm representing Ehsan Trust. My question is with, I'm sorry I forgot your name. Zia. Zia sir. It was really eye-opening and we didn't know the atrocities of microfinance or the exploitation of microfinance. But still, I would like to give example of Pakistan where the largest microfinance organization is Ahuat, and that is giving the interest-free loans. And the concept is basically of ta'awun and tabarru. So that is the largest microfinance of Pakistan. That model could be replicated elsewhere as well. That is one point. Your point, like you want to replicate your Indonesian model in Pakistan, but you also have to see the cultural differences and the norms. So how you say that model would be implemented or successful in Pakistan?
Yes, Ziad, could you please quickly answer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, the whole idea is to move away from a relationship of debt. And certainly, on an interest-free basis, that's the best form of debt. However, it is debt. And whilst, Akhuwat has been phenomenal in their progress and their impact on the community, we're saying that we want to raise the standard of the people from a socio-economic perspective. And that means that it requires a lot of active management. Active management in training them, active management in uplifting them, active management in sharing the risk of loss with them. So yes, agreed, it might be a cultural barrier, and certainly we're saying it's not a copy and paste scenario. We're saying that that model needs to be molded within the culture of any area that it wants to exist in. It can't simply be a cut and paste. So I accept your comments 100%.
Okay.
Thank you. Bilal Rasool, I am from the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. Excellent presentations, post-lunch, they're pretty reinvigorating. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on Ziad Saab's, I think brother here who just made a comment is pretty valid. I think the regulatory governance and the other framework cannot be, totally discounted. If you have an adequate NBMFI framework, I think that should cover, all your high costs of that are entailed in the microfinance, and I think coupled with Akhuwat and the models there, and an effective Sharia governance framework, I think you should have the appropriate model. Salman Saab's presentation, I just wanted to ask that you pointed out that there was structural anomalies, in the Sukuk, the Sukuk that you talked about, that defaulted, quote unquote. I was just wondering, what was the eventual verdict? Was it a Sharia advisory lapse or something like that? Were they penalized? Was there anything, was that ever taken up? Because, a Sharia compliance risk, I think, is something very, very delicate, and, it's already very scary to hear that a Sukuk has defaulted. In the future, if, I guess we will be seeing more, we need to preempt default, because obviously it has, horrendous consequences for the whole industry, because again, it's faith-based. So I just wanted to know, was there any action or was there someone held responsible for the structural anomaly?
Yes. Thank you. Hello. Is it operating? Uh, the resolution is still going on. The anomaly was not in the, for any law, whether Sharia law or conventional law, you can always exploit a law by remaining under the law but not following it. For example, Saum, it is permissible not to fast when you are traveling. It is permissible not to fast when you are traveling. But this time, Ramadan is during summer months, and so I deliberately travel from Jeddah to Makkah every day just to avoid fasting during Ramadan. I will make it over during winter months. So, if you ask a faqih separate questions whether can I leave Saum for while I am traveling, yes, you can. So this is not an issue of Sharia compliance in the structuring. It is how you use that. Since IOFI has blocked one thing, so you can still structure in such a manner that you are still remaining within the law, but the spirit is not to follow. This is what I'm. The point that is creating the problem is not this, that this will happen, and the issue is not that bankruptcy is bad. Bankruptcy takes place. In any business, some businesses will be successful, some businesses will go bankrupt. But the issue is that if a business fails, it has to be resolved quickly. And if it is structured rightly, the resolution will be easy. If it is structured complicatedly, in order to remain in Sharia while trying to do something else, then resolution becomes difficult because nobody has anticipated this can happen. And in that context, although they have structured trust and there are strong trust laws in Bahrain, and there is a central banking law for trust as well, but the requirement for that law is that any entity has to be registered as a trust with the Central Bank of Bahrain. But the sukuk is not registered in the trust of the Central Bank of Bahrain. So the trust laws, although there is a trust, etc., but it cannot be challenged in the court. So there are many loopholes that you can exploit always. And in the case of Pakistan, I see that in the SECP regulations for sukuk, they have given powers to the trustee. But if you look at the penal code or whatever code that you call which stands in the court of law, they are still talking in terms of the old trust laws and in terms of old SPV structure, in which the whole idea is just basically a SPV holding a debt, not any equity. And so that's also I pointed out that this has to be resolved quickly, because in case there is a default issue, the resolution will take time, because court will give a different verdict and the regulator will have a different understanding. Thank you.
Is there any other question from the audience? I have just one point, and Professor Abbas Mirakor is here. This risk-sharing principle, if you look at the financial innovation in conventional space, all they are trying to take the risk out of the product itself, and they're trying to sell it. And if we look at the Islamic finance industry in its current form, to a degree, of course, the form versus substance debate, but sometimes we forget these Sharia scholars are trained to be a judge. They look at the structure, whether it follows. So when you take let's say a sukuk contract, so you show him in bits and pieces, so is it a Sharia compliant? It is a Sharia compliant. But this micro level, they are not able to see. When you combine them, the end result turns out to be contrary to what we are expecting. So some way, in order for product innovation or regulatory perspective, we want to draw the regulation, we really need to have this education, the lack of education. I'm talking the scholarly level. It has to be done. So and I was very happy to hear that this IBA is doing this, we have a course called Financial Management for Non-Financial Managers. So we had to really short-term measure, bringing those Sharia scholars to learn some of this thing. And same way, those who are like me, never went to religious school trying to learn Sharia, we have to also learn from them. So both ways, as a request to IB and all the institute, as a short-term measure, we have to do that. But in the long term, we really need to develop this curriculum. We have been talking about these things. I have been saying this all along. Even if I pick one program here, you probably are bringing up with MSc, and if I look at the program itself, I would say, okay, you have 3 Sharia classes and 7 conventional banking and finance. You lump together, you're telling that it's an MSc in Islamic finance. It really does not make, so what I'm saying, same problem will exist. We have to amalgamate, we have to integrate the Sharia knowledge and the modern banking principle knowledge into one thing, not teach it separately. Then our mind will be compartmentalized, will be Sharia thinking one way, the conventional the other way. So this is where I would request the education community, including myself, spend your research and development dollar to develop this thing, and it is not going to happen just one day. It's just a continuous process, but somewhere this process has to start, and I do not see that process is starting anywhere. With that, I want to thank you, all of you, the presenters here and the audience, and for your contribution and comments. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Hassan and the learned scholars and presenters. Alhamdulillah, this last session was very effective. We had some very good presentations, and the best part is that we managed to close it at time. So thank you very much for the cooperation. And now I would request again our volunteers to please step forward with their task. I will request Dr. Kabir Hassan to please present these plaques to the scholars. The first one going to be presented to Ala Alabed. Then Dr. Muhammad Imran will collect his plaque from Dr. Hassan. Mr. Salman Sayyid Ali, I request you to please collect your plaque. And Dr. Ziad Muhammad. I would request Dr. Isha Saab, if you can please present a plaque to Dr. Kabir Hassan. Thank you, panelists. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, now we move towards the real closing session of the day. This is a wrap-up session where the day's summarized key takeaways will be highlighted by the director of SEEF, Mr. Ahmad Ali Siddiqui.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and Assalamu alaikum once again, everyone. Alhamdulillah, a very productive, useful day today, and we are very happy, and we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has given us tawfiq to do this conference successfully. Just to wrap up what happened today, Alhamdulillah, we started with a very powerful session, and it was a really productive session, first session where Mufti Taqi Usmani actually gave us a wake-up call, and we have seen our finance minister taking practical decision on the stage, and we now are very hopeful that we will be having an implementation team in place that will implement the recommendation of the steering committee for promotion of Islamic finance in Pakistan. And the conference has the same theme, that we are suggesting, or we are here to think upon developing a roadmap for Islamic finance. And continuing that theme, inshallah, after this 2 days, Chief will be preparing that conference deliberations, and we will be developing a roadmap that will be forwarded to all stakeholders, and we will at least put our efforts to give a roadmap that can help the country to convert from a conventional based system to Islamic system. Then another highlight of the day was the country report launch. Alhamdulillah, it was very well received, and till now the comments that we have received were very encouraging. And I would like to thank our partner IRTI, Thomson Reuters, and also my IBA team who have worked hard. And I'm sure that this report will be a benchmark report for Pakistan, and next time and every year, inshallah, we hope, and we have a plan to have an annual country report on Pakistan from the CIF, and with collaboration with our international partners. So, and then we will continue to monitor the progress as well. Also, I'm very happy to see very fruitful academic discussions today. We have 2 academic sessions, very powerful, one chaired by Professor Abbas Mira Khor and by Professor Kabir Hassan, and I think they very ably conducted the session, and the speakers were very, these papers were selected after very thorough review by our academic committee. And there was a lot of competition when we were selecting the papers, and I think the academic paper committee has taken the right decision, and they have shortlisted very interesting papers that have innovative ideas, and that provide something meaningful for the future. The session on digital disruption was again a very well-received session, and let's hope that we learn and we can think of some sketch of how Islamic Bank should look in the future, and what technology they should embrace to promote Islamic banking to the next level. And again, I would also like to remind all of you that tomorrow we have very powerful sessions as well. We have very interesting discussions tomorrow on infrastructure financing. We have very power table discussion. We call it great debate on how to improve the financial inclusion from Islamic banking platform. We have an exclusive policy dialogue on Islamic capital market, and we have invited all the industry players, mudarbas, regulators, mutual funds, the kaful industry, and we will be developing policy guidelines and recommendations for the capital market sector. And we have also 2 academic sessions and 2 industry sessions tomorrow. So I hope that all of you will join us tomorrow as well, and these deliberations will further lead to the growth of Islamic finance. And I would also like to announce that, as announced by the conference team, that we will be giving best paper awards. So inshallah, tomorrow in the last session, we will be announcing the name of the winners, the first prize, the second prize, the third prize, and the consolation prizes as well in the last session of the day. And that is followed by a power session, which is again attended by, we have invited the key decision maker in the Pakistan banking industry, and it will be chaired by Deputy Governor Saeed Ahmed Saab. So thank you very much for joining us today, and inshallah I hope that we will see you all tomorrow, and we have a very powerful and fruitful day tomorrow. Over to Raza. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed. And with that, we conclude the day 1 of this 2 days conference. But before we close, I would like to mention, and I would like to acknowledge the efforts of the organizing committee, which worked for last 45 to 60 days to ensure that it happens. These conferences are almost 15, 16 hours conference, but the work which goes for arranging these conferences are too many. So I'd like to name the organizing committee. Ahmad Ali Siddiqui was heading this committee. Then we have Shazia Farooq, who was the conference coordinator. Then we have Sarwat Hassan, we have Iram Saba, we have Taha Jamal, we have Miss Hafza Hassan, we have Zishan Ismail, and we have Syed Shamshir Hassan. Please put your hands together and big round of applause for this organizing committee. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala.